people don't realize that when you come to what feels like the end of your career, and I think for prime ministers and people writing series or writing their book, the end is not where you think it is. The end is not
No.
the writing of the book, and it's not when you just get like, oh yeah, like I might write something new, I might not. That's not really the end because your stuff becomes eternal.
It really does. And someone like him, I mean, how could he possibly stop? He's so invested. He's so invested
Oh,
in Australian affairs, in affairs. His interviews with Kerry O'Brien over the years have been amazing. His book that Kerry O'Brien wrote was, quite incredible. Yeah, he was definitely one of a kind.
every year we invite him to the Writers' Festival. He's yet to come, but we keep
Invite
trying.
Kerry O'Brien. He'll probably turn up. He goes to, have you invited Kerry O'Brien? He
Oh,
goes to
I
lots of
haven't.
them.
I'll put him on the
You
list.
should
Kerry O'Brien.
invite Kerry. I know he's going to Bellingen. He always does Byron.
Oh,
Um,
wonderful.
yeah.
Hang on. I don't think I can message people yet. I was messaging people just recently. Kerry O'Brien.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's always on the panels, and he does some of the key interviews as well.
Beautiful.
Yeah, he was on last year with Barry Cassidy, and they generally talk about, the state of media,
Yeah.
what's happening in, media and political affairs. But you don't know. I mean, he could turn up, give it a whirl. Why not?
If you don't ask, the answer's always no.
Exactly.
You just made me think, though. I've been thinking a lot about the certain media that's been coming out recently, and how it nearly felt like the YA dystopian themes went
Mm,
away really quickly. You've found
mm.
that what was it? Hunger Games, that series finished, and then it was like a big snap, and it all turned off, and you didn't hear about it anymore. And I think that it had something to do with the political landscape. You find that big publishers do sometimes they're after that shock value, but they're not after something that's like going to endanger the status quo at the same time. Um, so that's something where
So
indie
what do you mean
publishing
by
really
that?
shines.
So
Well,
what?
for instance, one of the main reasons that a lot of people indie publish is because they want to tell their story the way they want to tell their
Mm,
story. One of the reasons that I'm indie published is because when I first brought my books out, it was still common practice to whitewash the characters and to make them all heterosexual, and also to change the voices and the way that you perceive the different characters to what was palatable at the time. But that's not what I wanted to do. What my book series was about was showcasing what the world would be like if they made what I deemed, so it was totally private opinion, what I deemed to be the more compassionate choices throughout history with magic. Um, so people often, a lot of indie authors refuse to traditionally publish purely because they don't want someone else to change the voice of their narrative. And it might be the smaller details that are more important to them than the overarching themes.
mm. I think generally indie authors would have that opinion, most certainly, and it would be another reason for me wanting to self-publish as well. Not having the entire, I mean, it's not just down to content or central characters. It's also down to the look of the book, the cover,
Mm,
where you want to sell it, how you want to move it. There are so many positives to self-publishing, and
yes.
I weighed those up. Looking at whether or not I should potentially hold on for another 2 to 3 years as this very, very laborious process takes place through traditional publishing, and perhaps not even get there and get it over the line, or
Mm,
just have a little bit of element of self-control and do it myself and tell the story the way that I want to tell it, and tell the story that's deeply personal to me as well. And by the way, make the money that hopefully I can make through doing it that way and have a little bit more control too.
Yes, yeah. Instead of having to dish out your slice of the pie to everyone before you even get a few crumbs through, it often goes the other way. You get the whole pie and then you have to dish out bits and pieces to your editor,
Yeah,
your cover designer,
yeah.
whoever you're marketing through. Like all of these things are massive. But that control is something that I think audiences really appreciate these days. And that control is something that instead of getting fed the same narrative over and over again or the same sort of narrative over and over again, they get something fresh and unique. And then they really get to hook into it. And we were talking about book talk and things before, and books can absolutely explode on social media, and they're all indie published. It's very rare. I have not seen a traditionally published book explode on any form of social media the same way that the indie books have.
I was doing some research. I thought Colleen Hoover, is she not traditionally published? I thought
I'm
she
not
might
sure if
be.
she's traditionally published, but unfortunately, I would love to have her along, and I would love to chat with her one day
Mm.
because I have a pen name in romance, but the there's this overwhelming sense of people on social media, or maybe it's just the loud people on social media saying that the book is overrated, or that the books that she's put out are overrated. Much like, unfortunately, Cassandra Clare is another one that
So
the
yeah,
opinions seem to be that she's overrated. I enjoyed both books, honestly, but I'm very easy to please. I'm not very picky
I
when it
think
comes to.
there can also be some tall poppy associated with that as well.
I think so too. Um, but it may also come down to that bit of blandness from being traditionally published, or it could be that the expectations were too high. Um, but yeah, there's all sorts of reasons for people to leave bad reviews, and that just seems to be a common thread amongst the ones that I've seen out through traditionally published people. And it could also
Mm.
be that they want to just boost up the indies as well.
I think it's more recent that she's really received a slaughtering. Not that I've been following her particularly closely, but I know that when she was talking, I think she was talking about making a version of one of her books that was going to caricature, in a sense, some of the themes in one of her books. And I think that's what brought some negative PR around her. I can't be 100% certain of which book it was, but there's been some controversy to that end, and the cancel crowd,
Yeah.
then the mass turned against her and swayed.
Oh, hang on. We're frozen again. Just wait for it to fall out and fall back in. Ah, thank goodness for editing. Are you there, Karen? Nope. Yeah.
Rightio. Can you hear me? It's
Yes.
just liking us, is it?
Ah.
We might record and see if we can try our luck, eh? Actually get something in.
Ah. Well, I think that the in-between bits between the bad internet have
We'll
been
get
really
some
good.
we'll get some good bits.
Oh, but I do think so. And I think people don't realize how fickle cancel culture is. And people do it for all sorts of stupid reasons. Um, and sometimes they do it for really good reasons. But most of the time, I think that if you are acting with integrity, then you know in yourself that it doesn't matter what anyone else's opinions are. and that your actions will speak louder than other people's complaints. So Colleen
Mm.
will still keep writing. That's just who she is. I'm pretty sure she's very prolific, and she loves writing. And so she's just going to keep writing. And a couple of people whinging about her stuff or saying that it's not as good as they thought it was or that it's overhyped, that's not going, well, if that impacts her, I'd just love to give her a hug and tell her just to keep writing, because we all have these stories within us and it's up to us to tell them.
Absolutely. I mean, you're not ever going to have, as an author, 100% of the audience liking what you've written, interested in what you've written, or a fan of your writing. It's just totally implausible to think that, isn't it? Really.
If you're
How do
pleasing
you how do
everyone, you're
you handle
pleasing no
criticism
one.
of your books? Have you had some one-star ratings that you've had to grapple with in the middle of the night?
You know what? I had one star rating on Goodreads. It's still there because it's just a sad face. So it's like, okay, I don't know how to do anything with this. Like, you've not actually given me any feedback, so I keep it there just as a bit of a giggle. But I have had a couple of 2-star ratings, and I find that when someone's giving 3 or 2 stars, they're more prepared to actually give genuine feedback. 1 star normally means I've upset them, and I have very witchy content and very magical content, and so it's common for my books to not be welcome in Catholic schools. Um, and it's just something that I've accepted. And sometimes the 1-star reviews that are associated with that side of things, it's like, oh, it mentioned homosexuality, or it mentioned devil gods or something like that. Those are really good reviews because everyone who likes that sort of thing instantly told that's the book for them. And the people that don't like it are told, okay, I'm not going to read that one. So they don't read it and they don't leave more bad reviews. I'm just trying to think of a review that stuck with me.
I think as well, it's like all forms of review, really, these days. Google reviews, restaurant reviews, business reviews, they can be weaponized against
Yes.
individuals and companies. And I feel if you're just getting a sad emoji as opposed to at least a sentence to say why this person is, not in favor of the book, then to my thinking, it's not a review per se.
No.
It's almost like a fickle gesture. I somehow need to take this on board as I'm saying it when my book comes out, and reviews are circulating. If someone's not prepared to actually say why they didn't enjoy the view, it's kind of the book, and write a thorough review. It's I don't know how seriously you take that.
I think one of the key things is when you have your book, if you know it's been well edited, if you know the cover has been designed well, and if you know the writing is good, then other people's reviews are really just opinion. It's when they'll come through and say things. I remember one review that I had, which was completely valid, said that the book was too short, and a bit
Well,
too
that's not
easy for
necessarily
young.
bad.
No, no, but I did go back and add a prologue, so it nearly doubled the length of the book. Um, and so I knew it was short, and I knew that it needed some love, and that was in the works. So I was excited to be able to go back to that reviewer and say, hey, can you read it now? Because I'd love your opinion now that it's better. But most other people, if they're like, oh, it's not my thing, or I wasn't really into it, or I didn't like the main character, that sort of stuff, I'm like, okay, that is entirely subjective. That is entirely your opinion. And it just means that this is not the right series for you. It's got no personal standing on me. And I think we, as artists and as authors, we've got to separate ourselves from that. We were the conduit for the story. The story came through us, and we then put it out there. We polished it until it shined. And so, oh, hi, Mum.
Right, I'm just heading downstairs.
Hi.
Mum, this is Karen. Karen, this is Karen.
Hello, how are you? Nice to meet you. Are you going out the back, to
Be
sit
strong,
out in
Karen.
the sun?
she's just quitting smoking, so she's got to move around a little bit to get rid of the
Just to
cravings.
stay active.
Yes. But yeah, so tell us a bit about your book. When is it releasing?
So excited. I am so excited. So the book is going off to a distributor next week.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
yeah, and
Oh,
to it,
that's so exciting.
speaking about the editing process, the proofing process, designing the cover, selecting, that whole process I've been intrinsically involved in being a publicist,
Yep.
every single element, and regardless of being a publicist or not, being a writer and an author, like I want to make sure I'm turning out to the world the best possible product that I can.
Yes.
And I have to say I'm so proud of it. Like, it's my first, Stella Is Born is my first novel, and it's something that might not please everybody, but it's something that I will really be happy to, put the lid on and go, okay, great, first attempt.
Wonderful.
It's been a real it's been a real hard experience actually writing the book, and I'll get to that. So when is it out? I've been sending it to a distributor next week to have a look at, and in the hope that they'll actually take it on
Beautiful.
to push it out into the world via outlets. I spoke to them a couple of weeks ago and gave them a pretty, robust pitch. in the end, they're like, okay, let's send it in. Just send it in, and I'm like, yes, excellent.
Who are you
So,
going through?
pardon?
Who are you going through?
Woodlane.
Oh, beautiful. Yes.
Yeah, so this is where I'm starting, and I'm scoping out all sorts of opportunities. I'm not going to stop there. I mean, I didn't write the book just to have it sit in the top drawer type thing. So starting there, and hopefully they'll like it enough to take it on, and that will then start the process of when it will be released. So if that goes through, it'll be towards the end of the year that the book will be released, prior to Christmas, probably the October catalogue. Now, I can't say any of this conclusively, Rhiannon, so I'm not going to be here. I don't even know if I should be saying this, but that's what I'm wishing for, and that's what I'm actually pushing out for, to have it distributed by them. And I'll then hinge everything else around that in terms of the release day, publicity, getting it out to people,
Yeah.
pre-sales, and doing a whole, swag of interviews and things.
Incredible. And it's it's kind of like giving birth, because you go through the arduous gestation and labor of creating the book. It's like the editing and the formatting and getting it all lined up. That's the labor part. The writing it is the gestation. And then you have to raise it. Then you have to,
Ex-
you've got this thing, you've got this lump of words that's
That's
shiny and
it. That's it.
polished.
And you've got to do something with it. You've got this thing that
Mm,
then you actually have to do something with, as you say, and grow it through those stages of getting it out into the world and unveiling it, and
yes.
and people then having access to it. I've edited a couple of magazines, one which is a subsidiary of Rural Press, Focus
Ooh,
magazine, and giving, like, literally editing a magazine is like giving birth every month, most certainly.
oh,
But a book is just some other event, as you
yes.
know, having been, you've got 10 kids under your belt. You're definitely
Oh,
prolific. So, but it is somewhat like that. But I have to say, I've loved the process. Part of my perhaps reluctance in never having written a book in the past is because it was such a mystery. Like, I know how to write a full length feature article. I know how to tie together an interview with 3 different points of view. I can write a cover story. I've written a million press releases, but the book was always, how do I tackle this? And I've started several books in the past. I've actually written a play. I've co-written a play when I was at Australian Theatre Company, which ended up, where did that end up? As A2IP, the Australian Theatre Company, the Youth Theatre Company, we ended up putting it on at STC,
oh,
Sydney Theatre Company. So
incredible.
all of these sorts of things. I mean, we were young, we had all the ridiculous cliched characters in it, the Bonnie and Clyde sort of like duo, and the horrible protagonist female, and it was kind of it was a very exaggerated piece. But so doing all of those sorts of pieces and having fun with that, to me, was just great and easy. But writing the book was like, how do I do it? But now, having done it and gone through the process and understanding that there is an arc, and not to say that formulaic, but understanding that process a bit more now, it just takes the mystery out of it, and I can't wait to get my teeth into my second one.
Oh, that's so exciting. I do think, though, that it is very formulaic. I think that you could, but it's individualized.
Yeah.
Everyone's checklist is not going to be the same. I have a pretty extensive checklist, and often it pushes on just a little bit too much. Or sometimes it's way over the top and is way too much, but somehow we still get through it. But other people's checklists are very simple and very concise, and it's different for every genre and every
Mm.
story. So tell us a
It,
bit about what Stella Is Born is about.
So it is a work of fiction and centres around an actress, Stella Longhurst. And Stella, we see Stella in the initial chapter or two as a young actress, and she's hitting her stride. She's working in media. She's on the rise, and she's actually quite credible and starting to make a little bit of a name for herself in the acting arena
Hmm.
that she oscillates in. She has a really traumatic experience occur, and that is in front of her peers and a producer, and it is so traumatic that it actually sets her on a completely different pathway. So she stops acting for a while,
Oh.
for a significant amount of time, and she changes. Her entire being changes. It really strips her in many ways, and it was something that she'd never experienced previously. That sort of level of humiliation, and she has to grapple with that, and also go on a real journey with mental health, her mental
Mm.
health. At the time that happened, this is well predates Me Too, so these sorts of incidents were commonplace in acting, and certainly in situations where people are rehearsing or auditioning. It was not a place for the faint of heart, and
Mm.
as she discovered. So she kind of goes on this massive journey, and is starting to think, say 10 years after, that she might dip a toe back in the water with acting again. It's always been an affair of the heart and something that she wants to return to. And an opportunity happens upon her where she has the opportunity to audition for a role right at the same time that she's met a guy who happens to be the love of her life. So she's got this huge decision to make. She comes to this massive crossroads and has to decide what she's going to do with that. There's a lot of angst and pain involved in it, but there's a lot of joy in the story, and how she actually goes on a completely different bent to try and reinvigorate herself.
Beautiful. Ah, that sounds amazing. It sounds like the sort of uplift that a lot of women need these days, that overcoming adversity, and moving through, finding your own path, and learning about your own mental health. It's something, and I think they're trying to move us to the words mental wellness these days, because mental health is like, okay, you're just out of hospital, or like you're just away from hospital. You don't need to go into it, and that's health. But mental wellness is feeling good every day. Um, so it sounds like that's going to resonate with so many different people.
I think so. And the language around mental health is constantly changing. It's
Mm,
it's 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 always changing, and we don't say mental illness anymore. We avoid things like that because it does have that negative connotation.
yeah.
I work in mental health. I work for an organisation located down near Byron Bay called the Buttery. The Buttery's been around for about 50 years. It's a mental health and drug and alcohol rehabilitation centre, and I manage their communications. So I'm
Powerful.
sort of like enmeshed in that world as it is, and people are very open about their mental health. The counsellors and the practitioners that work there will say, "Oh, I've got ADHD, or I'm a little bit this, or I've got that," and it's really it's amazing because they're just so open about it, as they're constantly working in the industry. But having said that, there is still a lot of stigma
Yes.
surrounding mental health. We tend to say it's accessible somewhat these days. People are talking about it more. People are confessing that they might have anxiety, depression, ADHD, whatever it is. Some of those sorts of mental conditions that people have generally. But I still don't think we're a long way off from actually having an acceptance around mental health conditions. We really
Yes.
are. And in writing this book, I wanted to show a character, Stella, as, I suppose, an illustration of a very successful woman, seemingly successful woman, someone who's confident. She's, an actress. She should walk into the room, own the room, all of this sort of stuff, but still, because of a very traumatic experience, is grappling with
Yeah.
things in her own world. And mental, mental health conditions can come out of anything,
Yes.
stress, pressures. It doesn't just have to be one singular incident or accumulation of incidents. They can come out of many things. So I wanted to show that there are people that are apparently successful and apparently very confident that still do go through things as she has.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important for people to have an illustration of that, a character, to see that. And you could take out her, Stella, as an actress, and you could insert somebody, a paramedic. You could put in her place a teacher. You might insert, I don't know, a builder, for instance. Like it's a universal, you can universally apply it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, that sounds fantastic. It sounds pretty heavy, but I think
There's actually a lot of joy in it. There's actually a lot of lightness. There's a real romance running through it as well, and there's lots of
excellent.
references to movies and some theatre and stuff. So there's definitely that. But because she's a bit of a soldier, she manages to grapple through with a bit of buoyancy.
Excellent. Oh, it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be absolutely magical. Now, for everyone watching, you will be able to get a copy after the Writers' Festival, but you can definitely take pre-orders and meet Karen and have a good chat about everything to do with Stella Is Born and Karen's journey into publishing at the Logan Writers' Festival on the 9th and 10th of June. So that's a month away, a month and a bit away.
That's right.
Oh, I'm getting nervous.
So exciting.
Oh,
I can't wait to be there. It's such a great couple of days.
it's going to be fantastic. We've got some fantastic speakers, and I can't wait to hear you on your panel. It's going to be
Thank
amazing.
you. Thank you. It's going to be awesome. I'm looking forward to it. And thank you for the opportunity to be there too. It's
You
really
are
exciting for
so
me.
welcome. Absolutely. We always love to give the authors all up and down the southeast Queensland the opportunity to launch their work, to showcase their work, and to make sure that the literary community of Logan in particular is elevated because of the knowledge that everyone's bringing in. So thank you for being part of it. And we will see everyone on the 9th and 10th of June for the Logan Writers Festival. Bye.